Where are you all? In this day and age, we are going to go into one of the most mind-boggling and heartbreaking tales that have ever been recorded in the Bible. A startling betrayal of King David by his own son Absalom is the subject of this story. Imagine David, the famous hero who defeated Goliath with nothing more than a sling and a stone. David was a shepherd child who grew up to become a powerful king, and God made the decision to choose him. Nothing could have adequately prepared this guy for the knife that was thrust into his back by his own flesh and blood, despite the fact that he had battled lions, bears, and armored forces. Absalom was not a typical case of a son. Stunningly attractive, with flowing hair that turned heads, and a charisma that could win over anybody. He was the golden kid. He was all that a child should be. However, underneath that sparkling veneer was a fire that was fueled by ambition, anger, and defiance. Where did everything go wrong? When Absalom turned against his father, who loved him, and the king who governed Israel with wisdom and might, what was the motivation for his decision? Not only is this a story about royal drama, but it is also a roller coaster ride filled with devotion, revenge, and heartache that will shake you to your very core, for sure. Stay here, because by the time you reach the conclusion, you will realize the catastrophic cost of this treachery and the reasons why it continues to reverberate throughout history. It's time to get started. All of you are welcome to return. Come with me as we delve into the muddled and complicated origins of this tale. Consider the following. King David, the mythical ruler of Israel, the man who defeated Goliath with a single stone, is more than simply a king. He is a parent who is in charge of a family that is more than everything but flawless. Believing me, this family drama is the place where the seeds of treachery are planted for the first time. Maacah, a princess from Geshur, gives birth to Absalom, David's third son, and he makes his entrance onto the scene. But he is not your typical son. Not only is he attractive and personable, but his hair is so thick and flowing that it almost seems like a crown in and of itself. He is the golden kid. Nevertheless, hidden underneath that allure is a tempest that is gathering, one that is destined to rock David's kingdom to its very foundations. At this point, David's family is not a tiny one. The fact that he has a large number of children and various women brings to a state of anarchy. Just like a royal soap opera, when feelings of pride, envy, and fury are simmering just below the surface, this situation is similar. Absalom's siblings are the source of the most of the problems. David's eldest son, his half-brother Amnon, is responsible for an act that is inconceivable. Amnon has an unhealthy obsession with Tamar, who is the full sister of Absalom and a beautiful young lady who works in the royal court. Amnon will one day trick her into falling into a trap by insinuating that he is ill and requesting that she take care of him. As a trustworthy and kind person, Tamar steps straight into it. After then, a horrifying event takes place. Amnon imposes himself on her, causing her existence to be shattered and leaving her in a peaceless state. She screams out in humiliation and desperation as she makes her way to Absalom, her brother. This is when things start to get serious. Absalom does not immediately erupt into action. Not at all. He is far more intelligent than that. It is clear that he is becoming more angry, despite the fact that he consoles Tamar and takes her in. The honor of his sister has been taken away, and her future has been wrecked. So, what exactly does David do? There was nothing about the great monarch, the man of justice. Amnon is not punished by him, despite the fact that he is enraged. It's possible that he's overly kind with his eldest child, or that he's feeling overwhelmed by the clutter that's in his own home. No matter what the cause may be, David's silence is very loud. The matter is very personal to Absalom. Upon seeing his father, the one whom he is expected to idolize, he perceives a lack of strength. A seed of darkness, is planted deep inside his heart at that same instant. It's no longer only about Tamar anymore for this. As a son watches his father deteriorate, the story revolves on power, loyalty, and love. The rage of Absalom is not loud. Rather, it is calm and calculated. He is not the kind of person who can forget and forgive. It is his nature to wait and to make plans. A period of 2 years has passed, and he has not spoken or taken any action, at least not yet. Be that as it may, however, the more Tamar looks at Amnon, and the more she mourns, the more gasoline there is added to the fire. The affection that Absalom has for his sister is mingled with the rising animosity that he feels against David. The rifts among the family continue to grow, and the moment is ripe for something cataclysmic to occur. Don't leave just yet, because what Absalom is about to do next will leave you completely stunned. Now that we have that out of the way, let's plunge into the point when everything begins to spin out of control. It is Absalom's vengeance. This is not only an act of wrath on anybody's part. This, on the other hand, is icy, planned, and nothing short of terrifying. Think about this. Since Amnon, Absalom's half-brother, perpetrated that unthinkable deed against Tamar, Absalom's cherished sister, 2 years had gone since the incident, in quiet for a period of 2 years. A period of 2 years during which Absalom kept that anger buried deep inside him, allowing it to fester and expand. Do you have any idea how tense it felt? The way that it must have been eating away at him each and every day? In addition to Amnon, he is enraged. However, he is also quite angry with his father, King David. How come? Mainly due to the fact that David, the powerful king and the one chosen by God, did nothing. Amnon is not guilty of any wrongdoing whatsoever. Absalom saw the silence to be acts of treachery. And what exactly does he do? And he waits. He has plans. As a predator would be when it is following its prey, he is patient. So, one day, he makes the decision that it is time. He prepares a celebration. It is a significant one. When he visits his estate in Baal Hazor, he extends an invitation to all of his brothers, including Amnon. Try to picture the situation. Smoke from roasted meat permeates the air, and the night is filled with the sounds of people laughing and music playing in the background. Everyone is engaged in eating and drinking, totally oblivious to what is about to happen next. Amnon is present, and he is most likely feeling smug and believing that he is untouchable. Absalom, however, he's keeping a watchful eye out for the ideal opportunity to strike. His face is completely expressionless, despite the fact that his heart is beating rapidly. The technique of concealing his own emotions is something he has perfected. First, it takes place. The signal is given by him. The only people who are loyal to him are his servants, and they move in. In the same way, they have been anticipating this. The moment Amnon even has a chance to respond, they draw their weapons, and the battle is done. The target is reached with a blade. A spill of blood occurs. Chaos breaks out. The cries are replaced by the laughing. It is precisely there in the midst of the feast that Amnon has passed away. No flinching occurs in Absalom. He stands there, as icy as a rock, observing everything that is taking place. This is not only an act of vengeance, this serves as a declaration. He is letting everyone know that I am not someone who should be messed with. Not like my father, I am not a weakling. But let me tell you something. As a result, he does not pause to rejoice. His actions are well known to him. Just now, he has taken the life of the king's eldest son. If you are Absalom, the golden lad with the gorgeous hair and the attractive smile, you will not be able to simply escape that situation. It is not something that you can quickly walk away from. What is the following step that he takes? He makes a dash. Immediately he makes his way to Geshur, the region of his mother's birth, where his grandpa, the king of Geshur, is able to provide him with protection. He has been hiding out there for the last 3 years. The period of exile was 3 years, planned for 3 years to come. Will you be able to sense the gravity of that? It is not for the sole purpose of evading punishment. He is pursuing something that is more significant. It is not yet the conclusion of his narrative. The beginning has arrived. Give it some thought. Absalom had the ability to let it go. He had the ability to forgive, go on with his life, and be faithful to his father. However, he is not like that at all. This fire that he carries inside him, this yearning for justice, or maybe it is pride, will not allow him to calm down. Taking Amnon's life was not sufficient. It is as if he has accidentally ignited a match, and the whole kingdom is on the verge of catching fire. Absalom is the one who is wielding the hammer when it comes to the disintegration of David's household. When he was in Geshur for nearly 3 years, what was going through his mind? Do you think he is planning his next move? Is he imagining himself at the throne? At least one thing is certain. This act of vengeance is not just the conclusion of Amnon's life. It is the first step that leads to the terrible betrayal of King David that Absalom would do. Continue reading, because the next part of this tale is going to be much more crazy. Everyone, here we are, people. He has returned to Jerusalem, Absalom. It has been years since he has returned from his exile in Geshur, where he had been hiding away from the penalties of murdering his brother Amnon. On the surface, it seems like this would be a time of reconciliation, doesn't it? An opportunity for the father and son to repair the relationship that had been damaged. So, you should reconsider. The narrative takes a sinister and twisted turn at this point in time. When Absalom returns, he will not do so with a heart that is filled with forgiveness. On the contrary, he is harboring something that is far more perilous inside him. Ambition. Ambition that is unadulterated and unyielding. Believing me, what he performs after that is nothing less than a brilliant performance. The scene is about to be set. David, who is the king and the one whom God has selected, makes the decision to demonstrate compassion, and he allows Absalom to return home. Absalom, however, does not get the opportunity to see his father straight soon. This is the catch. For a whole 2 years, he has been unable to leave Jerusalem and has been living in this peculiar limbo. The throne is within his grasp, yet he is still so far away. Do you have any idea how tense it felt? Is he experiencing an increasing amount of frustration? It is true that he is not incarcerated, but he is also not free. David seems to be holding him at a distance, as if he is uncertain about whether or not he can trust this kid of his. In all honesty, with what happened with Amnon, who could possibly hold him responsible? Absalom, however, not only is he not wallowing in self-pity, but he is also not passive. I'm so sorry. He is a patient individual. He is quite crafty. He observes, waits, and plots at the same time. This period of 2 years is not a waste of time. Rather, it is preparation. The kingdom, the people, and the weaknesses in his father's leadership are all subjects of his research. When he is eventually given the opportunity to shine in the limelight, he does not only enter the spotlight, rather, he completely takes over the show. Think about this. As time goes on, Absalom begins to appear at the city gate. People would bring their troubles, their disagreements, and their need for justice to that particular location back then. It was the hot spot. What about the Absalom? He is present, and he seems to be every bit the royal that he is. According to the Bible, he is very beautiful, with long flowing hair and a face that has the ability to captivate anybody. But it's not simply his good looks that people find attractive about him. According to what he says, it is the folks who he listens to. He takes note of their grievances. Someone steps up and says, "I have been wronged, and I require the assistance of the king." And with a compassionate expression on his face, Absalom leans in and murmurs, "Oh man, that is terrible. I wish I were in charge because I would see to it that you were treated fairly. Yes, I would look after you." That's it. In a single swift motion, he is sowing the seeds, concerns about David's ability to lead the group. Seeds of devotion to himself are there. In other words, he is not directly asserting, "Hey, I'm better than my dad." Not at all. He is far more intelligent than that. He is not overt. He is taking a conservative approach. He goes out into the world on a daily basis, offering handshakes, gaining hearts, and beginning to establish a following. There is a humming among the folks. What they are saying is, "This guy gets us." He is concerned. Why does he not have the authority to make decisions? It's not simply empty words either. Absalom is a fashionista. It seems as if he is accompanied by a royal entourage as he arrives with chariots, horses, and 50 men racing ahead of him. The motion is one of power. This is what he is trying to convey. Take a look at me. I am already a king in every respect. All of the people consume it. They have had enough of waiting around for David to make things right. They are looking for someone who is not afraid of looking the part. What about the Absalom? Exactly what they are looking for is being provided by him. During this time, David is likely in the palace, where he is under the impression that everything is well. It is completely unknown to him that his son is now working to turn his own kingdom against him. Absalom is not only constructing a fandom, rather, he is putting together an army. He is preparing the basis for the most heinous level of treachery. When everything finally comes tumbling down, it is going to be an incredible event, guys. Continue to stay there, since this is only the beginning of his ascent to prominence. And now we have arrived at the moment when this drama is about to boil over. It is at this point when Absalom's revolt reaches its peak. More than ever, this is not only a covert operation. This is not a battle. Rather, it is a treachery on such a massive scale that it challenges the very basis of David's kingdom. The move that Absalom takes comes after he has spent years planning, earning hearts, and developing his power base. This is not only a desire for influence. The throne itself is what he desires. He had every intention of ripping it out of his father's hands on the spot. Think about this. Absalom travels to Hebron, a city that has a long history of royal activity. Once upon a time, David himself was anointed king at this location. There is no one who is unaware of the symbolism. A message is being sent by Absalom, which is that I am now the new king. His followers, a growing number of admirers who have been influenced by his charm and promises, are gathered together by him. This is followed by a bold and surprising proclamation in which he declares himself to be the king. Could you ever fathom the boldness of it? In Jerusalem, his own father is still sitting on the throne, and here we have Absalom, plotting a revolution as if it were his birthright. Nevertheless, he does not end there. It's a bad thing that Absalom has a genius working for him. Ahithophel, who might be considered one of David's most trusted counselors, is switching sides. This individual is not a minor player. In addition to being intelligent and cunning, David is deeply hurt by his betrayal. Absalom's rebellion is more than simply a temper tantrum when Ahithophel is there to advise him. A well-planned attack is being made. They are armed with strategies, resources, and sufficient momentum to make David lose his cool. While the kingdom is dividing down the middle, Absalom is riding the tsunami of anarchy that is sweeping over the land. It is about this time that David learns of the insurrection. He is going to be sought after by his own kid, who is his flesh and blood. Is he doing something? It is not yet the case that he sits and fights. He makes a dash. Yes, the strong King David, who was responsible for the death of Goliath, runs away from Jerusalem. Try to picture the situation. The city is in a state of terror. A number of individuals are muttering, yelling, and taking sides. After gathering his devoted supporters and his family, David makes a break for it and flees the city. This is both embarrassing and upsetting. King, who is attempting to escape from his own kid. How did things get to this point? Absalom, however, is not finished trying to twist the knife. The palace is taken by him when he marches into Jerusalem, and he asserts that it is his property. The throne chamber, the royal riches, and everything else are now under his power. Then, he does something that is incomprehensible, something that is so heinous that it is nearly difficult to describe. He sleeps with David's concubines while he is placed up in a tent on the top of the palace, where everyone can see him. It is no longer only about power in this situation. It's private to me. It is a public embarrassment and a blow to his father's respectability. Absalom is revealing to his father that he is not only stealing his kingdom. Every ounce of your dignity and all you've ever worked for is going to be taken away by me. It's likely that others who were watching were taken aback. Indeed, this audacious action represents the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. Yet, it is more than that. The heritage of Absalom's father is being trampled upon by Absalom. The stories of this uproar are being heard by David, who is now located someplace in the bush. Even if his whole heart is aching, the battle is not yet done. He believes that he has triumphed. He is in possession of the city, the palace, and the views. However, he has failed to take into account one thing: David's resiliency. Even if the ancient monarch is falling, he is not yet out. There is a storm on the horizon, and the deadly culmination of this uprising is about to take place. In the next section, Absalom will experience a complete and utter breakdown of his relationships. And with that, we have arrived to the terrible conclusion of Absalom's narrative. It is at this point that everything comes crashing down, that his rebellion comes to an end in a manner that no one could have ever expected. Imagine the dense woods of Ephraim, which are filled with trees and are humming with high levels of anxiety. David's devoted army, which is being commanded by the ferocious Joab, is getting closer. Absalom's soldiers, who were previously so self-assured, are now dispersed, desperate, and battling for their lives on the battlefield. As a result of the clash of swords, the yells of troops, and the unpredictability of combat, the atmosphere is thick. Absalom, the golden child with his flowing hair and lofty dreams, is smack in the center of it all. It is a scene that is filled with brutality. But here is when things take a turn for the unexpected. Absalom is attempting to flee the wilderness while riding his mule. He is making his way through the woodland. Because of his hair, oh, that magnificent hair, the pride of Israel, which is long and luxurious, he gets himself into trouble. As it falls through the low-hanging branches of an oak tree, it becomes entangled. The mule continues to go. But what about Absalom? He is left hanging there, powerless, suspended between heaven and earth. He is unable to do anything. Are you able to picture it? The guy who had ambitions of becoming king, who had deceived his own father, and who was now ensnared by the exact thing that distinguished him from others. Do you agree that it has a lyrical quality, an unexpected turn of events that has the sense of something that was taken directly from a myth? Step forward, Joab, David's commander, who is as strong as nails. The situation that Absalom is in is brought to his attention by a soldier. I spotted Absalom hanging from a tree, the young guy adds, as he hurries up to the scene while breathing heavily. As about Joab's response, icy and calculating in nature. In response, he inquires, "Why did you not put an end to him right then and there?" Hesitating, the soldier waits. He stutters, "No, I have no ability to." He was told to be spared by the monarch. Absalom was to be protected, and David's instructions were quite clear. Bring him back alive. David continued to love his son, in spite of all that had happened, including the rebellion, the betrayal, and the humiliation. The heart of a parent is split between justice and compassion, and that is exactly what it is. Are you Joab? Sentiment is not anything that concerns him. His perception of Absalom is that he is a danger, a rebel who must be countered. He seizes 3 spears and marches directly to the oak tree, where Absalom is still hanging, defenseless. He then proceeds to attack the tree. Joab immediately takes action. Absalom's heart is struck by those spears as they are driven by him. The revolt was dealt a decisive blow with each successive stroke. 1, 2, 3. The men of Absalom, upon seeing the demise of their lord, give up all hope. The struggle is no longer a part of them. It is over in an instant, just like that. It is just the rustling of the leaves and the distant laments of those who have been vanquished that can be heard in the forest. Word makes its way to David, and oh, the agony that eventually ensues. In the meanwhile, he is holding out hope and praying that his kid has managed to live. However, the messenger appeared with his head dropped and his voice lowered. Absalom has passed away. David's response is unfiltered and incomprehensible. Despite the triumph, he does not celebrate it. He does not look forward to the conclusion of the uprising. Instead, he bursts into tears and falls. "Absalom, my son, my son, my son, my son, my son, and my son. How I wish I had passed away instead of you." A father's pain is laid plain in his screams, which reverberate throughout the camp. This is not the victorious king that we are familiar with from the narrative of Goliath. This is a shattered guy who is grieving the loss of the youngster he was unable to rescue. Give it some thought. The life of Absalom, which was so full of promise, comes to an end in a mishmash of branches and blood. His defiance, which had been constructed over the course of many years of hatred and ambition, vanishes in an instant. David, who emerged triumphant but also heartbroken, is left to pick up the pieces of the puzzle. The sight is eerie, and it is one that lingers with you long after the violence of the conflict has subsided. What an expense, what a loss, all of which was brought about by the treachery of a son and the love of a parent. So, what are some of the lessons that we may learn from this terrible story of Absalom and David? This is not merely a narrative about treachery. Rather, it is a mirror that reflects the cost of ambition, the fragility of family, and the grief that follows when pride takes over. Let us delve deeply into the lessons that this story has to offer. It was a spark of legitimate fury that marked the beginning of Absalom's journey. Tamar, his sister, had been treated unfairly, but his father, the mighty King David, did nothing to correct the situation. This wrath may have been a manifestation of a need for justice. Instead, it continued to grow. As time went on, it evolved into something sinister and twisted. In the end, Absalom allowed it to consume him to the point where it was no longer simply about vengeance. It was about power. Give it some thought. Absalom was in a position to succeed in every way. He had a charming and alluring appearance, and he was the type of man that could come into a room and have everyone turn their heads. People had a deep affection for him. He was so charming that he could attract crowds, and he was so crafty that he could start a revolt right in front of his father's eyes. But with all of that, what did he do with it? It was discarded by him. In exchange for a momentary opportunity to ascend to the throne, he gave up love, devotion, and a legacy. Not only did he betray David, but here's the kicker: he did it again. He was a traitor to himself. There was no victory to be found at that moment when he stood in Hebron and declared himself to be king. It was the first step in his downward spiral. Okay, let's take a break here. Visualize yourself as David. You are a brave warrior who has confronted giants, a poet who has poured his soul into psalms, and a king who has been chosen by God. However, your own kid has rebelled against you. Because of your own flesh and blood, you are compelled to escape your city while barefoot and crying, as your people stand in shocked stillness to watch you. Are you able to experience that? On that particular day, David did not only lose a fight, he was deprived of a portion of his heart. What about the Absalom? He was unconcerned about it. The ultimate act of rebellion that he committed was to humiliate David in the most intimate manner imaginable. He marched into Jerusalem, grabbed the palace that belonged to his father, and humiliated David. That is hardly an example of ambition. Hatred disguised as triumph is what you have here. The plot, however, takes a turn for the worst at this point. The end of Absalom was not a glorious one. It was hardly a valiant attempt to hold out. It was a complete mess, rather pitiful. Think about this. While he is riding through the forest, his stunning hair, which represents his pride, becomes entangled in a tree. In the meanwhile, his mule is galloping away without him, and he is hanging there motionless. Then Joab, David's devoted general, takes the initiative. Although David had pleaded and begged Joab to save his son's life, Joab would not listen to him. Through the heart, there were 3 spears. It was not a crown that marked the conclusion of Absalom's revolt. Rather, it was a small cemetery with a mound of stones where his dreams were laid to rest. Will you be able to sense the gravity of that? A father's kindness was disregarded, and the life of a son was taken away. You are completely broken by David's response. As soon as he gets the news, he falls, rather than triumphantly celebrating his win. May God bless you, my son, my son. I wish that I had passed away rather than you. That is unadulterated, unseasoned sadness. David was not interested in this. However, he did not desire a throne that was tainted with the blood of his child. He would have done everything to be able to turn back the hands of time and heal the fissures in his family before they fully broke apart at that moment. Time, however, does not bend. Consequences are a result of choices. So, what is the most important thing to remember? Ambition has the potential to cause blindness. It is possible for you to forget who you are and the people you love. The pursuit of a crown ultimately led to Absalom's death. David was able to forgive, but he ended up losing his kid. When pride leads the way, families fall apart. Do you have any thoughts? This may have gone in a different direction. Do you think Absalom was a villain or a victim of his own suffering? Please leave your comments below. What do you think about it? And if you found this story to be particularly moving, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and come back for more stories that will provoke you to think, feel, and question everything.